Good evening, everybody. We've just started our webinar on the election on the 25th of March. We have a number of guests tonight that we're going to be talking to. In particular, if I may, the Hon Robert Borsak, Upper House, and is the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. And we also have Millie Fontana from the Liberal Democrats, if I'm correct, Millie. And then, of course, Silvana Nile as Revive Australia Party. So they're on board, and we're waiting for one more candidate, but we're going to start anyway because I think there are people that are looking forward to getting on board. The way it'll work is I'm going to ask each of you to speak for 5 minutes, and then what we'll do is go into a Q&A. This is being recorded so people can look at it, and I'll send you a copy if you wish to have a copy. But in particular, you'll notice that it is recorded, so I hope you don't mind. And so let's just watch our P's and Q's, I guess. I think that'll be okay. Any questions I'll get to later, but everyone's now getting on board, and I think we'll start now. The usual process is I let the ladies go first, but I'm not going to do that on this occasion, Robert.
Why is that? Because I'm outnumbered, is it?
You're outnumbered, yeah. I was going to start with Milton, but he hasn't logged on yet, so we'll just keep waiting for him. Robert, I wonder if you could start, maybe go for 5-6 minutes, and then we'll move on to the other candidates. And then by the time we go into Q&A, we should be getting right on to about 7:30. Everybody, I'd like to introduce Robert Borsak, as I said, MLC, Upper House, New South Wales Parliament. The election's on the 25th of March. Pre-polling, I think, starts on Saturday. So this is very timely for everybody to have a say. And I'm hoping that you'll all get the opportunity to have a say. I think I can see Milton Caine, but he's registered incorrectly. He should be, Milton, if you can hear me, you should have registered as a panelist, not using your own registration, but I'll allow you to talk. Maybe that will help as well. If you can, Milton, go back, have a look at your email, and please log on as a panelist. Thank you, Milton. All right, Robert, over to you. Let's hear what the Shooters, Farmers, Fishers Party has to offer the candidate on the 25th of March.
Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. Yeah, well, you said policies. We've got an awful lot of policies, Greg.
Yeah, well.
Where do you want me to start? Look, simply put, the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party is biased for the bush. What we do is we're always looking for opportunities to make proper and complete representation for people that are not living in the major metropolitan areas, primarily, of course, Sydney. The reality of what we've seen, certainly in campaigns past and in this current campaign, is a government that's very much focused on what's good for Sydney must be good for the rest of New South Wales. And that's certainly not been the case, certainly not been our experience in years past. So whether it's to do with education, whether it's to do with health, whether it's to do with policing, whether it's to do with any and all of the issues that are affecting Christian communities right across the state, in fact, right across Australia, this government, especially under this Premier, has completely abandoned what he believes, or what we all thought he believed in when it came to Christian values. He has sold out to the moderates in the Liberal Party, and to try to somehow rather redeem himself, what he's decided to do is to throw rural and regional communities in relation to a digital cashless card under the bus by simply saying, well, in the next 4 to 5 years, you will all lose your right to go to community clubs, and there are literally, I think, 1,200 clubs in New South Wales, from the smallest to the largest. Those in regions, for example, in the seat of Murray, which the current independent member sits, Helen Dalton, they want to introduce a cashless card. Research shows us that that will cost at least 1,000 jobs in that electorate, and probably cost in the vicinity of $3 to $5 million in lost wages. Not mentioning, of course, the costs involved with people not having any community access to grants or for their sporting activities or other community activities. We've been campaigning all over the state, as Silvana knows, and I've met her many, many times through Fred and the interactions with Fred. What our party's all about is freedom and the right to choose what we think is the right thing to do. We represent traditional values, and we also know what it's like to be a minority group, especially when it comes to government policy, whether it's Labor or whether it's the coalition. They always seem to have something that they need to do to make sure that they're going to oppress shooters. They're going to try and get rid of recreational fishing, for example, which they had a crack at that in 2018. Last year and early the year before, they attempted to introduce animal rights law to replace animal welfare law, the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. I could just keep on going and going and going. This is not a government that it purports in any way, shape or form to be a conservative government. And now we're sitting on the edge of seeing a situation where the coalition may lose to a Labor government, and we don't know what that's going to be like. And Labor don't traditionally, of course, support Christian values, as far as I know, and as far as I've seen in years past. We voted against the abortion bill. We voted against the right to choose. I can't remember what we called it. The voluntary dying legislation. We always seem to be at odds with what seems to be now a majority house in the Legislative Council, where people tend to vote with the Greens, with the animal liberationist people who seem to think that animals have rights equivalent to or even more rights than animals. And it just goes on and on. So I'm happy to obviously get into more detail later on if someone wants to ask questions. But the reality is shooters, fishers and farmers is not just about shooting. It's not just about fishing, and it's not just about farming. It's about good, decent values, and that mostly are held these days, not so much in Sydney, but well, of course they are held in Sydney, but certainly represented in the people that we work for and we try to represent outside of the large metropolitan areas in New South Wales.
Thank you very much, Robert. That
I'll
was
stop there, Greg.
great summation, and we'll come back to you. But I like what you had to say. I'd like to now move on to Millie from the Liberal Democrats. Is that correct, Millie? But introduce yourself and let's see what you've got to offer on the 25th of March. Thank you, Millie.
Thank you very much, Greg. Well, look, it's never really been my intention to get into politics. It just sort of happened. So in 2015, I joined the Australian Christian lobby in the No campaign against same-sex marriage. And the reason I did that is because as a daughter of a same-sex couple, I realised the consequences that change to the Marriage Act was really going to have on our discrimination law, our family law, and of course, just overall the children and what they're exposed to. So, you know, my arrival into the Legislative Council ticket was, you know, quite late as well. And really what got to me was seeing Alex Greenwich proposing anti-conversion legislation for New South Wales. Now, you know, many of you may be familiar with the Victorian counterpart, which is really quite insane when you look at the way that it impacts people's religious freedom and so on and so forth. So, you know, in the state of Victoria, you can't even take someone, you know, outside the state to receive any form of care that is seen to be non-affirming. So, you know, what they call anti-conversion, even when they put forward this legislation, really has nothing to do with what you'd imagine it would, which would be, you know, physical intervening and shock therapy and all these wild things and the like. But it really is just an attack on pastoral care. It's an attack on the family unit. Parents have had their children removed because they won't give their children gender-affirming care. And this has just been going on for so long, and it has translated through to New South Wales a little bit culturally since changes to the Marriage Act. You know, we have parents being taken to court and having their rights challenged, minors pursuing GILIC competence so that they can consent to their own procedures. And now they just, you know, Alex Greenwich and all of these hardcore LGBT activists he has, you know, pushing him in this direction. What they really want is to just put that final nail in the coffin on parental rights and religious freedom. And so what that looks like is the inability to pray over a confused person and to give them scripture as a remedy to any conflict they have within themselves. So it's a massive overreach into religious freedom. It's a huge overreach into the medical practices with health professionals. I know PhD psychologists, psychiatrists, they honestly are scared of this. You know, it's difficult enough trying to treat young people, in particular the transgender ones, because you're very scared of how it's going to potentially impact you legally as it is. Because the standard care and the norm these days is to just affirm people's gender, and that'll be the end of it. So, you know, people across the board in New South Wales are very concerned about this. And, you know, to add to that, it's just gone rampant in our schools, the LGBT ideology. The sexual education in particular is very confronting for a lot of children, for a lot of parents. They're looking at this stuff and going, how on earth has this made its way into the curriculum? And why don't I get a say on whether or not my child should receive, you know, that level of education? And so for me joining on with the Liberal Democrats, I sort of said, you know, let's bring some power back to parents first and foremost. Let's make sure that they have the right to remove their kids from these left-wing leaning subjects, all of this inappropriate content. It's really the parents' right, first and foremost, to decide what their children are exposed to. I was raised atheist, and my parents, you know, they just wrote a permission slip to sign me out of religious education. And so I think it's fair that we as Christians, and I'm now Christian after my experience with the Australian Christian Lobby in Parliament, by the way, but, you know, as Christians, we have a right as well to remove kids from those subjects. I don't think it's unreasonable at all that anything that comes into conflict with people's values comes under scrutiny, because as is our right, we are free people. You know, religious institutions, people of faith, you're looking at the migrant communities in particular in Western Sydney and a lot of the regional communities, as Robert would be familiar with, they don't share the values with all this nonsense.
No.
And so, you know, we really need to start putting our foot down and being courageous as people of faith and not being worried too much about being cancelled on Twitter by all of these lunatics. Just really stand up for what we believe in. So, you know, that's why I'm running in the upper house for the Liberal Democrats. And, you know, it's one of these situations where I think I've been very passionate about voter education in the past through some of my work with Turning Point Australia, helping maximise the Christian vote across the board or conservative leaning votes. You know, and so I think people really, they do need to have a look at their preference discipline. It's become a little bit complicated with a lot of these candidates, you know, who should we choose and where? But I think if we have a consistent flow, go from the one you like the most and just work your way down, make sure everyone's accounted for, and we should be okay this election. So that's really what
I don't like any of them. But anyway, that's another.
I'll get back to you. Millie, wonderful, very good background, and I share your concern. What I'd like to do is now move on to Milton Caine. Milton, I see your granddaughter's there, but can we see a picture of you, my friend, or are you able to put the camera on? Because you're up next, but I'd like to.
I thought the camera was on.
No, I've got your two granddaughters there, Milton, and I'm assuming they're granddaughters, but yeah, it would be good if we could see your face somehow.
Where is that?
But while Milton's looking for that, I'll just say that Milton Caine, of course, is running again running as a candidate in the upper house. He's from a party, or not yet registered, but from a political party called Christians for Community. And he will be, of course, the #1 candidate. And it's interesting because I'll get back to this later, but I'm going to try and get into the discussion of where the Christian vote will go with the departure of the Honourable Fred Nile. But I'll get back to that later. Milton, are you able to now show us your...
I can't see where I can go onto that at all. I don't know why.
It's done there. If you go to your... You've got a microphone and you've got a camera. If you go to the camera, you might be able to just click on that down at the bottom, right at the bottom of your screen.
Well, I can't see the camera. The chat, raise hand, show
keep going to keep going to the left if you can see it.
Well, see, as I go on that, it says select microphone, select speaker, test microphone. It doesn't talk anything about
There should be a camera there for you. Video.
Can't see it.
Look, video. Look at video.
Can't see video. It could be the fact that I went in on the wrong one because I couldn't find the other. I could
Okay.
not find the other one at all.
All right. Let me have a look for you a minute, see if I can help out. But okay, what I'll do is I think, Milton, we have to move on, but you may just have to, I think I've admitted you as a candidate, so you should be able to get in. Let me have a look. Okay, remove chat. Okay, I can't seem to change it from here. Milton, over to you. Unfortunately, we'll just have to listen to you. You've got 5 minutes and then we're going to move on to the next candidate. So over to you, Milton. Introduce yourself and tell us about what you've got to offer on the 25th of March.
Yes, well, I'm Milton Caine. I've been involved politically for a long time in various organisations, including the former Christian Democratic Party. I was their policy coordinator for at least 12 years. I guess I come from a concern for how things are going. First of all, many of the politicians do not consider themselves to be servants of the people, but rather that they need to be served by the people. And that seems to be the attitude that most of them seem to have. And of course, the direction they're going morally, I mean, it's just it's open slather towards the pit, you ask me. There are so many things which are just, they've lost the plot on. The very fact that I can, if I find a piece of a body on the street and I can take it to forensic science and they will come up and tell me that the DNA is screaming out male or female, and yet we actually have people going around and simply saying that we've got to back up some person's opinion about what they think they might be. I remember years ago, some woman claimed to be a cat and she had all these bits and pieces shoved into her face and her nose altered. It doesn't make any difference. She's a human being. She was never a cat. So all this is absolute garbage. And this has come from out of a university in Melbourne where I think it was Ross Ward, started writing some ridiculous stuff for some PhD that she did. This whole stuff about the confusion. I mean, these people, they need something to help them through the difficulties. And in fact, in their school system, because we now encourage people to actually, question their sexuality in a way that possibly they would never question before. All those sorts of things are a real concern. And of course, from all of that comes so many other things. The fact that basically we're walking into the path where the right to life is just considered to be, just forget it. There is no right to life in the mind of some. And I don't know how far we're going to be away from, instead of voluntary euthanasia, where we may go forward from that even to more horrendous stuff. So there's a whole range of those issues. And yet, not only that, we've got the government with no clues. None of them in government seem to have any clue about how to create affordable housing. They won't even put a dollar figure on what affordable housing is. At the end of the day, that's where you've got to come. If you want to talk about something like that, you've got to do that. And as a Christian, there is a thing that we should be doing to help people to be able to get decent housing, to get decent food, and to get all those decent things in life they should be able to have. No one seems to be wanting to go down that path. They're wanting to have all these silly inquiries into things about confusion more than actually moving in a positive direction to enhance the person. People are always having to doubt their self-worth and self-value. And there's nothing there to enhance them and to encourage a person to be the best person that they can be. Mm-hmm. Whether or not the person chooses to accept God or not, they ought to be the best person they can be. And obviously, if they do accept God, it actually means they can actually do far better, I believe, as far as that's concerned. So I guess they are a part of the areas of my concern. They go long and deep, and I have thousands of policies changes I'd like to make. But yeah, that's where
All right.
I am.
Thank you, Milton. That's a good little summary. And again, I'll come back to each of you with some question time. I've already had people send me questions, so that'll be interesting, and I'll get to that in a moment. Our final candidate for tonight's session is Silvana Nile, who is the lead candidate for the Revive Australia group. She's standing as an independent. I think the rest of you are actually in a party, I think, or except from Milton. But Silvana, over to you, 5 minutes, and then we'll go into question time. Thank you, Silvana.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Robert, Millie and Milton. That's why Revive Australia Party is coming in, because we're here to restore, repair and rebuild. And we've taken that from Amos 11, and we're definitely using our Judeo-Christian basis. We've got to get back to our roots. We've got to get back to where in Federation in 1901, we relied humbly on the blessings of Almighty God, as Sir Edmund Barton said, and we have to come back to that. As much as people have tried to remove those principles and erase them, they are there. We are a democracy, a constitutional monarchy democracy, and based on Westminster Constitution. So we've got to remember that this is our freedom. The freedom comes from Judeo-Christian heritage. So coming in to the upper house, I want to be part of the rebuilding of the faith of Australians back into the leadership of this nation. As we've heard on the panel tonight, our teenagers, adults are lost. They do not know who to vote for. I am the genuine article. Based on the Judeo-Christian heritage, I will be proclaiming the good news for the brokenhearted, the downtrodden, and I'm here to set the captives free, not for me, but for God's kingdom to come, to see it be done on earth as it is in heaven. We cannot get anything right if we do not follow the 10 commandments. The Lord Jesus Christ gave us the 10 commandments to save us from ourselves. He gave us the rules and regulations. A man shall leave his wife, they shall become one. That's how we have children. As soon as we take away from that, what have we got? Over 200 different gender identities. As soon as we take away from being custodians of our land, of not taking care of the downtrodden, brokenhearted, the ones that Jesus Christ came for. He came for the sinners. As a party, we're not here to come against people. We are here to bring repair, restoration, and rebuilding in their lives. I love all the LGBTIQ. If Jesus was here, he would be loving them, embracing them, and saying, turn away from your sin. I love you, but I do not love your sin. To get into the kingdom of God, we cannot have sin in our lives. So we love, we lead. And our real problems today are not economic. They're not even political. Our real problems today are a lack of good character, values, and common decency. And I want to restore these back into public policy. We have 17 policies that I'm going in with for the Revive Australia Party. I will be, as you can see behind me, number 1 candidate. Number 2 will be Reverend Honourable Fred Nile. You put 1 and 2, and then you number everybody else the way that you want to number them. But make sure you number 15 boxes or your vote will not be valid. The most important ones, of course, Millie mentioned, we have to bring also including scientific evidence for biblical creation in our school curriculum. I've been an educator. I have a Bachelor of Education, and I've seen where Darwinism was taught to me in my high school days as a theory. It's almost getting taught as a fact. It is not a fact, it is a theory. So we need to educate teachers that they do not present something that is a theory as fact. We need to bring in biblical evidence into our curriculum. We also need to support the sanctity of life from conception to death. And that is including, especially now, there's sex-selective abortion. I mean, these are things we heard about in China, in countries like India. It's in Australia and it's being permitted. We have to fight against that. That's discrimination against women. How can that be happening in our nation? We also need to look at Aboriginal parliamentary representation as a body coming in, but working with our government so that we can collaborate with what they need in their culture, so they represent what's in their culture. We're looking for the Jews. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. We need to be standing up against this and putting anti-boycott divestment sanctions in place so that these things are not happening. Our government is supporting, unfortunately, they're allowing for this anti-Semitism to arise across our nation. So we have to protect the Jews. It is so important. We need to eliminate domestic violence. We need to eliminate pornography. I want to see pornography and domestic violence eliminated. A lot of domestic violence in my studies has shown to come from pornography. Pornography ruins families, it ruins lives as gambling does. Nobody should be tampering with any sort of pornography. It brings lust into your life, and then you start entertaining lust, and before you know, people are in affairs and leading their lives astray. And we have problems in our nation today because of broken families from gambling, pornography, and domestic violence. So it is so important that we hold up all these things. But of course, we have increased affordable housing.
Silvana, 1 minute. 1 minute. I've got to stop you. Yeah.
Okay, increasing funding for medical facilities. We have a ratio of 1 nurse to 3 patients. We need to get 24-hour care for these patients with registered nurse, not nurses, registered nurses who have done first aid. As Robert said, rural medical facilities, we need to look at the rural areas, supporting sustainable and affordable energy. We are paying through the roof since poles and wires. We all knew it was going to happen, and we're going to look at implementing permanent price caps on energy providers. You know, and please look up our Facebook. There's more there. We support our constitutional monarchy. This republic, we do not have the blessing of God under a republic. That could lead to dictatorship in this nation because we don't have a governor general who's going to come in and be able to stop that. And we saw what happened with Whitlam, and we need to be able to have a governor general there. God bless you.
Thank you, Silvana. There's a time. Okay, everybody, we're going to Q&A now. Can I ask each and every one of you, and I'm going to keep this civil, so let's just follow my lead. When I ran this webinar, I had an email 2 weeks into the promotion of this webinar, and I'll just read you out part of that email, and it said, "Hi, Greg, this is a great idea. Unfortunately, I'm not sure I want to be a participant in this particular webinar because, quite frankly, if you've got the Liberals, you've got Labor, you've got One Nation, you've got the Shooters and the Greens, everybody else is irrelevant." Can you comment on that? I'm going to start off with you first, Milton.
Well, I guess that's the thinking of many people who consider that others to be irrelevant. But the question is, will somebody, if a person gets into the parliament and they're able to stand strong, it doesn't matter whatever happens, they're able to stand strong, they're able to raise the point. And even if the government of the day perhaps has the numbers, even if they have them in both houses, you still have the capacity to argue the point, and you can create public pressure upon the government of the day if in fact you argue strong. The other side of it is if you happen to get into the parliament and you're able to use your vote wisely. One of the problems we've found is that some of the crossbenchers from time to time will allow their negotiations to happen behind the table. As far as I'm concerned, if I was in the parliament, the negotiations would be in the parliament where they should occur, not behind the scenes. I'm not into the lobbying stuff where people are trying to lobby to lock up your vote. I prefer to actually be there and listen to the persuasive argument on the floor of Parliament and argue the case. And quite frankly, when you do that, you actually do make an impact.
Thank you, Milton. I'll come back to a good point you raised. Millie, over to you quickly.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens in politics, right? We see it all the time. In particular, the candidate forums at the minute being promoted by a lot of the lobby groups are shining bright like a diamond when it comes to who's picked a camp and where they want people's votes to go. Now, what they don't factor in is that there is an uprising of different groups and communities, in particular over the last few years, that do not feel that their values have been represented. Now, a lot of my base supporters come from Western Sydney. So, you know, the migrant communities in particular are absolutely livid with all the things going on, in particular when it comes to their kids. And, you know, very much the same for the regional communities, a lot of libertarian supporters. And so, you know, the idea that there is only room for X, Y, Z candidates, I think, is very narrow-minded. We can only base things off the data we have in front of us. You know, I mean, I would say that, you know, anyone who's running under a political party that, you know, is registered and above the line has as much of a chance as anyone else, given what they have built over time in their communities. And, you know, the Liberal Democrats have elected members in other states. It's not entirely irrelevant. And, you know, it's up to the people at the end of the day. It does, you know, I'll give you that. It does complicate things when we have below the line, because of the margin for error. And I think by design, it's there like that to stop people from running successfully. So, you know, but I think voter education is really the way to go here. And I'm not about to sit here and take the stance that anyone else is unworthy of their candidacy on the premise of, you know, there is only room for XYZ parties. And I think a lot of people have picked a camp, and they've done that to quite deliberately box out fellow Christians. And that's something that I'm personally dealing with. I haven't been welcomed to some of the candidate forums when I do indeed have a track record, in particular in the children's rights space. So, you know, Robert Borsak also, I haven't really seen him being invited to some of the panels. So there is a gatekeeping exclusion sort of mentality happening here. And I think it's fair game, honestly. Everyone will campaign to their best ability.
Thank you, Millie. Excellent answer. And I like the way you responded. And again, it's not my question. It was written to me. So I'm just from somebody very well known and high up. Silvana, again, a brief question, because I've got to get to Robert, and I've got a couple of other important questions from the listeners.
Well, if I've got this right, Reverend Nile was the first crossbencher to come in with the Liberal and Labor, and he set the scene for crossbenchers. And people used to laugh at him and say, oh, there's only one of you. What can you possibly do? But God had the mathematics, and Reverend Nile ended up being able to be the final casting votes when numbers were a certain way. So the beauty of coming in as the underdogs, as the crossbenchers, is that there is power to be able to sway the vote for and remove corruption and bribery out of these types of things so that we get God's word into Parliament. I'm coming in for governance. We need, as they say, we need to keep the bees honest, and I'm not going to say the word, but you hear that all the time. If the crossbenchers don't come in, these people will become to a point where they're almost dictatorial. And we can see this happening on so many occasions with the hogging of portfolios, with swaying the vote and trying to convince people a certain way. If I come in, I'll be sticking to my Judeo-Christian heritage, just like Reverend Nile did. I will not be open to bribery and corruption, as Reverend Nile wasn't either. And I will be moving for the people, by the people, of the people.
Thank you, Silvana. Excellent. Okay, Robert, obviously you weren't in that list that I mentioned. As I said, he mentioned the student. Robert, but what's your response to that, please? Because I think a good point was made that, you know, you could have been invited to some of these candidate forums, and I think there is some gatekeeping. Millie's quite right. And anyway, your response, please, Robert.
I actually have done a couple of faith-based forums, but obviously Millie knows about some that I didn't get invited to as well, so that's okay. Look, I happen to believe that we're in a democracy and everyone's entitled to have a go, and if we all adopted that attitude, well then we're only going to think about the important ones and the ones that are there already, then well, we wouldn't have a democracy. We'd only have a one-party state.
Yes.
And these days, as far as I can see, we've almost, as far as the two major parties are concerned, or major groupings are concerned, we effectively have a one-party state, because you've got Labor and you've got Labor Light. And as far as I'm concerned, the more groups that can form themselves into political parties, the more opportunity we've got to get the proper diversity of opinion into the Parliament.
Amen.
to give us a chance. And right now, where we're sitting, we've got the Greens, who are complete. Well, we all know what they are. Now we've got animal rights people in there in the upper house who are advocating for animal rights over human rights. And you know, the Reverend Fred Nile is retired now. Maybe, hopefully, Silvana will get in. Who knows? But in the end of the day, unless you have a go, unless everyone feels that they need to be and want to be represented and have a crack at it, then we'll be stuck with same old all the time, going in a particular direction. And sometimes you do have the balance of power on a vote, but my experience has been, certainly even before I came into Parliament, is that if you do an arrangement with the current government, at least, which has been my longest experience, don't trust them for one moment to actually stick with their side of any bargain, or cop any amendments that are really worthwhile that you want to see go through. They're totally untrustworthy, and you just can't deal with them. Well, at least our party can't deal with them. So it could be the same with if Labor comes in. I'm not picking any favourites. All I'm simply saying is the more diversity of opinion in the upper house that reflects our side of politics, the better. And at the moment, we're on the losing end of it.
Okay, excellent. Now, I'm going to do something that I haven't tried before, but this is really going to be testing the waters. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, and all I want is a yes or no, or a one-word answer, or maybe a sentence. So are you all ready for it? Okay, here we go.
I don't like it.
Depends on the question, yeah.
That's right, Robert. All right. Well, I'm going to start with you, Robert.
Yeah.
Will your party support The Voice?
No.
No. Millie?
Absolutely not.
Silvana?
Definitely not.
Milton?
Absolutely not. There's enough representatives in the Parliament to apply to every voice, every person.
Okay.
The voice.
Thank you. Next question. We're going to make it really quick. Will your party support, or you as an independent individual, support Mark Latham's parental rights bill? Silvana?
We're planning to have our own parental rights bill, and we're hoping.
So that's a no. That's a no for the moment. Okay, Millie?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's written there and it's sound, of course.
Thank you, Millie. Milton?
I think that on the basis at the moment, it is better than nothing, and they will stick with that until it can be improved.
Thank you, Robert.
Doesn't go far enough, but we'll support it.
Okay, question 3. Here we go. Because I really want to get through these. Will you as an independent or as a party support homeschooling, Robert?
Yes.
Yes. Silvana?
Absolutely, definitely.
Good. Milton?
Yes, and we would like to put some support for those people doing that. That's financial support for them doing the homeschooling.
Millie, can you hear me?
Hi, yeah, my answer
Okay.
is yes, it's parentals.
So-
Yeah.
Yeah, you're supported. Okay. The next question is a little bit longer, but I want you to, and this will be interesting because I was asked this by a couple of the major party people that I know that rang me and contacted me. So I hope you're brave enough to answer this question or or honest enough, and I'm sure you're honest. That's not the right word. Forthright enough. Okay, number 1. Silvana, who will your preferences go to?
Well, at the moment, we're not preferencing anybody.
Okay.
I've been trying to ring all the parties and they
Okay.
haven't called me back. So we're just letting everybody choose whoever they
Okay,
want.
thank you,
after us.
Silvana. Milton?
And because I'm a very strong democratic person, you choose your own preferences. If anybody
Okay,
needs
thank you.
advice upon the standards of people, I will give that advice.
Yeah, good answer. Thank you, Milton. And Millie?
So Informed Medical Options Party, One Nation, Shooters, Farmers, Fishers.
Okay, thank you. And Robert?
At this stage, we're just vote 1, except in the upper house where you actually do have to put a safety nomination in case you drop below the 15, which we won't. Because I think we nominated 18. So the answer is ours is predominantly just vote 1.
Yeah, that's okay. Look, I understand that it's still early days, perhaps, maybe, I'm not sure. Okay, now this next question is, sorry.
I was just going to say, you know, preference discipline is important, and I am kind of disappointed that, you know, some of the major on the minor right, I suppose, aren't doing preferences to value aligned parties because we have such a significant risk of wastage. Even though many people don't actually print the how to vote cards, and in that case, I can maybe understand it a little bit, but you know, it's a good gesture of faith to actually secure the vote, to make sure that your preferences do flow. So, you know, it's something that we often caution against in our communities, just that exclusion factor. But, you know, I'd love to hear the reason why you've opted to do that, if you'd be willing to answer that.
That's you, Robert, I think.
I just got a mosquito, sorry. Well, look, that's just been our party's decision. It's not my decision by myself. We've found in times past that we have a very large ground game. We have a lot of people on the ground handing out in various electorates. And when people have come to us for wanting swaps, we've found that they can't match that in the ground game in terms of handing out on our behalf. So where we've come to is that we're not really trading apples for apples if we're doing that. The other thing too is that you know, the LDP have recently had issues with what's been going on internally, and I must say I was approached, or our party was approached late last year, and we were happy to engage in some discussions. But then what seemed to happen is that things seemed to change internally, and we weren't then approached again by anybody as far as I'm aware. So whatever may have been able to happen couldn't happen, and that's really where we got to. And our party then made a decision finally that we would basically universally just vote 1, and that's what we've done in the past. Oh, the other thing too is we have been accused by the coalition of preferencing Labor, which we haven't done, and some Labor people have actually accused us, I don't know where they get it from, that somehow or other we favour the coalition. So no matter what we seem to do, we seem to cop it from right and left.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Well, just quickly
anyway,
in
that's it.
response to that.
My
I think
apology.
you
Sorry,
were-
Millie, go. Yeah, go
I
on.
was going to say, I think you were approached, but obviously things get lost in translation. And as I understand it, the shooters have also had a bit of an internal meltdown as well. I think it's been a bit dysfunctional on everyone's part this election.
Well, no, we haven't been dysfunctional at all. What happened was that we had a couple of rats sell us out to the Liberal Party, and were not prepared to sign contracts for their candidacy this time around. And in doing so, they decided that they were going to walk. In the end of the day, you know, Millie, what it got down to? MONEY. They wanted us to pay for their campaign once they were elected, and our members paid the money to get them elected, represented them in their electorates. They would then proceed to cut the deal and finalise the arrangements with Mr. Perrottet. What they didn't know is that I knew what they were up to, and the members spoke. It went to our AGM, and that was the end of it. If you want to characterise that as dysfunction, then you're quite entitled to do that. But it had nothing to do in relation to what was going on or what could have gone on between the LDP and the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party.
That's
Thank
actually
you,
really
Robert.
shocking. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a disgrace.
Okay. What I'll do is I've got to get these questions, really. I've got to go through these, but show me a political party that doesn't have internal disputes and I'll show you heaven.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Exactly. Now, let me just sort of couple of quick questions. These are very important. As you know, our friend, Mr. Alex Greenwich, and I use the term friend loosely, is
No friend of
suggesting that
mine.
there's going to be a conversion therapy being introduced in the parliament. If it gets through, and I'm praying it doesn't, will you, as a party or independent, support the right of people to pray within a particular zone against conversion therapy? Millie?
Mate, I'll put the whole bill in the shredder myself. I'm not interested. You know, obviously the Labor and Liberal governments have pre-endorsed this. And, you know, Dominic Perrottet put a little clause out there that he won't stop people from being able to pray or to preach some type of way. But in no way did he say that people's right to actually seek help with their gender identity or homosexuality would be still legal. So I don't trust them as far as I can throw them.
Yep.
I'm inclined, you know, if given the balance of power, I'm not passing anything until that issue is resolved, because it really is the downfall of the entire religious community in the state. So that's my answer.
Excellent. Milton?
I guess one of the simple things to it is that I find it fascinating that they want to stop conversion therapy, that is going from a conversion back to normality as much as you can, but do not want to stop going from normality to a conversion to be abnormal.
Correct.
And if legislation ought to be balanced, it ought to be on both sides. So therefore, let's put it another way. I will support legislation to prevent people from actually going and being hunted to be actually converted to have this the various therapies and the surgeries and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
That's
Thank you,
it.
Milton. Thank you, Milton. Silvana?
We shouldn't be discounting things that the Christians are presenting because they are coming from a genuine sense of people coming back to some kind of living what we'd call as mainstream lives so that they fit into society. So it's really important that we have prayer. But why haven't we looked at the statistics to what conversion therapy actually has done and the benefits, rather than replacing it and saying this is better? Really, I don't think the statistics and the surveys have been conducted in an honest and fair way to prove that.
Okay, thank you. And Robert, finally, your party?
Look, we just don't accept anything that Perrottet says. He pretends to be a man of faith. He's far from that. He's controlled by the left moderate group in his own party. Anything he says, not only got to be taken with a grain of salt, like Millie said, but it's just bullshit. So we will oppose any of that rubbish coming from either side, as we would oppose any of Mr. Greenwich's king-making nonsense that he parades around on the front page of the Herald as some sort of, prince of God knows what.
Yep. Thank you, Robert. Good answer. Now, again, I've just got a couple more, and then I'm going to let each one of you finish off the closing statement. My next question is, have you been approached or asked to comment from any of the mainstream media, or have you been totally ignored? Millie?
Yeah, so I did get one exclusive article after a protest, but largely it is being gatekept, very much so. I think there's a lot of red tape surrounding a lot of the issues with children. I suspected I might be able to bypass a little bit of that red tape because I do indeed come from a same-sex family, but, you know, it's still an uphill battle. You know, they seem married to certain people. It's very obvious who they are. So, you know, it just is what it is. And it's on us to make sure that we vote with people according to our values.
Thank you. Robert, I know you've got a lot of negative publicity, for want of a better phrase. Has anyone really wanted to put your side in? Have you got any positive media you can?
Greg, there's been no negative publicity other than what the ABC and a couple of other people have been prepared to push. It's like it's less than a storm in a teacup. I've just spent the last since September, the last 3-4 months moving all over the state. I've just spent the weekend, the last 3 or 4 days in Bathurst. Nobody, and I mean nobody, talks about any of that nonsense. They've got more important issues that they've got to address, and those issues are all the sorts of things we're talking about tonight. As soon as you cross the stone curtain and get on the other side of the divide, you're looking at another New South Wales. That part of this state, and also up the coast and down the coast, they are different places. They are not Sydney. They are not Sydney, and the people that are in government that are in the opposition benches and in the government benches are not representative of what's actually happening to more than a third of the people in New South Wales. So,
thank you.
That's really
Robert.
where we're
good
coming
data.
from.
Yeah, that's good data. Silvana, have you been approached by the media? Have you got anything positive?
Oh, definitely. After Reverend Nile fainted and it turned into the fact that he had collapsed and he tripped, we got media like you wouldn't believe. It was amazing. But the most important thing was that we were outside the project to say there were demands, a peaceful praying, and, you know, they covered Reverend Nile more than what they covered what we were standing for. But hopefully it's got us on the Richter scale a little bit with the media now that we are running.
Thank you, Silvana. I actually got a call from the mainstream media as well, and I refused to comment on the situation. Milton, did I have you? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I've been getting letters in the local paper up here on a regular basis, and then I registered as a candidate, and I've seen a drought since. I guess their response is a lack of letters being published. And those issues which I raise are the continual issues about the matters which ought to be there. You know, whether it be The Voice or whether it be you know, the Elvis Squeezy with his flopping superannuation stuff, which is a superannuation fiddle. Considering that I actually submitted stuff to Paul Keating in '92 to make it better, because I knew this fault was going to happen. But yeah, they've just shut up, basically shut up shop. I'll find out whether or not they're still shut up, because I've sent one off recently where I actually signed off that I was a candidate, because now I need to do that, and I don't know whether it's going to happen.
Thank you, Milton. Good luck with that. Now, very quickly, have you all heard of the phrase elevator pitch? Have you heard of that phrase?
No.
All right.
No.
The elevator
Well, I heard
pitch
it now.
Well, you have. All right, here it is. The elevator pitch is, you get into an elevator, you're going up 4 or 5 floors. It takes about, 30, maybe 25, 40 seconds. I want you to convince me I should vote for you or your party. Give me the elevator pitch in 40 seconds, maximum 1 minute. Okay, Milton, I'm going to start with you, mate, because I think you're on a roll. Okay.
I think that people should vote for me because I've got the guts enough to stand up to anyone, and I have the capacity to debate. I've proven that by the time I've been to inquiries in the Parliament. I believe that I know some answers to things which some people may not even understand, because I've been involved for a very long time in politics. I have a long history, and the only thing I actually haven't done is been a member of the House, either house that is. And I think that I have lots of answers that can make the place far better and certainly bring back some moral value.
Thank you, Milton. This is not a big building, so our elevator doesn't go up too far. So you've only got 30 seconds. All right, Millie, over to you.
Look, the short of it is that I will not tolerate anything that comes into conflict with people's values, right? I'm in a unique position as the daughter of a same-sex couple to turn around and go hard against all of this woke nonsense in a way that people simply cannot, because they haven't lived it and they haven't experienced it. And I think that there's room for that. In particular, I'm 30 years old and I know my stuff. I can go toe-to-toe with just about anyone on legislation. I understand it well. So, you know, I think there's room for the next generation of politics as well. We need new and unique voices, people that can represent different communities, in particular underrepresented regional and, you know, Western Sydney faith communities. Huge focus on that this election. So I think make your vote count and make sure that you practice good preference discipline. Pick your favourite and work your way down. Don't exclude someone because you don't agree with them all too much or whatever. Pick your favourite and go down. And we should be all right. We should have the balance of power.
Thank you. Silvana, you're in a 30-second elevator. Go.
I want to be part of the solution, not the problem. And I will be upholding our constitutional monarchy, rule of law. I will be fair and just. I'll listen to everything that's presented, but I will be bringing the gospel truth of the Judeo-Christian heritage. I've been in politics for 15 years. I've run since 2007. I've run in 9 elections. I've got a lot of experience behind me. I have a diploma in ministry, so I'm a pastor, and I also have a Bachelor of Education. I've been teaching for 35 years from preschool to high school. I can come in as a role model for young people.
Wow. Thank you, Silvana. All right. Well, there we go, Robert. Your pitch, and then I'll close up.
Shooters, fishers and farmers have been in the Parliament in New South Wales for, or at least, since 1995 with continuous representation. We've held the balance of power sometimes not. We'll always stand for the underdog. We'll always stand for the person that comes knocking on our door and needs help. Government, whether it's greyhounds, whether it's the taxi drivers, whether it's abortion, whether it's right to life, etc., etc., etc. Those are things that are fundamental values for our party, because we know what it's like to be a minor party and be put upon by the majors. Vote 1, shooters, fishers and farmers. You can rely on us.
Thank you very much. Okay, look, on behalf of the Christian Voice Australia, the organisation, look, what I'd like to do is, Silvana, thank you so much. Robert, thank you. Milton, thank you. And Millie, thank you. And may I sincerely echo the real democracy I think Robert mentioned, the fact that I can get grassroots people like yourselves to outline what you're standing for, I think is important, because it gives everybody the chance to vote according to their conscience and a vote according to their values and morals, and irrespective of what they might be, but we're hoping that they are Christian Judeo-based. May I just say, God bless you, and I will hopefully see you in Parliament on the 26th of March. God bless and good night to everybody.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg.
Good night.
I don't think anybody will be in the Parliament on the 26th. Takes a little bit longer.
Thank you, Milton.
I just
good
like
night,
to be
everyone.
factually correct if possible.
Good night.
Good night.
Buonanotte.